Okay. Good morning, world. How are we today? I have hopefully fiddled with this phone holder enough that it stays put and doesn't keep falling down, like, facing downward or making too much noise. The noise thing is annoying. I get it. I have re-listened to yesterday's video and I found that really irritating. I've also taken off my little smelly dangle things in case it was coming from that, because I can't quite tell, because I mean obviously that was like bumping around a lot, but they were too, and when I'm recording I can't hear anything making that irritating noise. It's only when I re-listen to it, so we shall see if this morning's video is better. Now, Tuesday morning, what are we talking about? I have two things that I was going to do the video on this morning, because number one, I woke up thinking about one of them, and number two is excuse me, today is a like a historic apology being made in Parliament in Australia today to the Indigenous people, as part of the ongoing Close the Gap initiative. And I guess we'll just talk about that one first. So, you know, obviously, like with the Close the Gap thing, you know, the biggest part of that is the ongoing negative effects that colonisation in this country had on the Indigenous people, you know, especially the families that were affected by the stolen generation whole saga, you know, that caused trauma, generational trauma for generations. You know, and obviously we all know how unjust and just terrible all of that was to have happened, and it was actually as well sort of something that has been covered up for many a year. And you know, on this channel we don't shy away from pointing out when the government has done horrible things towards its people, or towards the people of this country, you know, and call it out for what it is. And, you know, another thing that's part of the apology for today is about ongoing over-representation of Indigenous people, you know, who the government, you know, is interfering with. So like with families and child protection and things like that. Apparently, you know, Indigenous people and Torres Strait Islander people are overrepresented number-wise with how many children are being removed from their families. And you know, I really like just that point alone. You know, I've thought about that a bit, because, you know, as far as I knew, child protection had to, like, a certain level of neglect or mistreatment, or things like that had to be met, for a child to be removed from a family. Like, to my understanding, that was like a real last resort. And I was under the impression as well that child protection was under the obligation to assist families in basically every way possible to keep the family together. So, like, through support, through programs, through appointments and things like that, having basically ongoing interactions and things like that. Even as far as I knew as well, children with parents who had issues with substance abuse and things, to my understanding, they were supposed to basically have support things available to them, and basically if they could show up with a clean drug screen, then the child would be back with them, and so I've had, like, my younger sister, she actually has been she's had issues with substances, and she was unable to have access to her children, and as far as I'm aware, that's the only issue that child protection ongoingly had. I don't know if mental health issues was also a concern for them, which everyone knows as well that if there's ongoing substance abuse issues, that affects people mentally too, doesn't it? With their decision making, their ability to do things, what they're focused on, and their mood and overall, demeanor towards people. And so I'm not sure if that was also part of the issue, because I am aware that my sister was quite aggressive towards them. But as I have previously touched on in other videos, I haven't had communication with my sister in quite a while. So, it's one of those relationships that I've had to have boundaries and things. And anywho, from that experience, I was under the impression that they were trying to even do supervised visitations and things, but there was issues all related to those plans not being met, and I think, like I said, the ongoing positive drug screens or things like that. And anyway, so that's, my sister's, classified as a white woman. And then, I have also previously talked about how, due to issues with my abusive ex-partner, he made multiple reports to child protection ever since I left him, claiming all sorts of things. And anyway, it was I think it was 2022 when they, showed up. And yeah, I have to say, I feel like they were basically like, it's like they came in with the assumption that the allegations were true. And it's very scary to go through all of that process. As I've said before, I was also pregnant at the time. And it causes a lot of stress and upset for the whole family, even children, just to go through the investigation process, and it's not quick. I think it was, I think it was mishandled anyway, because I did end up having to call and speak to sort of like a department manager or something at one point, because I just wasn't hearing back anything. My children were never removed or anything like that, but it's just, it's a bit unprofessional to have no one sort of getting back to you about things and what's happening, and confirming that it should be case closed. So anyway, it's an upsetting thing to go through, just the investigation, let alone if they actually removed your children. And it's supposed to be because serious neglect is proven, or serious substance abuse is proven, and you're not willing to get help for that and get clean and be a good parent, so you can get your kid back. Mental health issues, I guess, that pose serious risk to the children. To my understanding, it was a certain degree even had to be had to be proven before they could remove your children. So when they're talking about an overrepresentation of Indigenous kids, and from my understanding, even newborn babies being taken from mothers, being taken from families, I can't understand what's happened there. I mean, is it that there is some sort of systemic racism thing happening to do with that department, or is it that there is is serious neglect provable in those cases? Is serious drug issues provable in those cases? Is serious mental health issues that pose serious risk to children provable in those cases? There should be an inquest, there should be evidence, all that sort of stuff. And I believe there was some sort of inquest that was taking place, but to my knowledge, that hasn't even been completed. I'm not trying to say, I'm sure the authorities are doing the right thing, and because trust me, I'm also of the understanding that it doesn't matter if it's an authority, it doesn't matter if it's government. I know that atrocities can happen, and serious injustice, even by government agencies, can occur. I am very aware of that. I'm not on their side. I'm just trying to understand how things like that can happen. And I watch a lot of we've got a channel on our TV programming, and it's called NITV, and it's a TV channel that really represents Indigenous people in Australia, and you know, what they've got going on, what they're doing. And you know, oh, okay. And anyway, so like on that as well, I've seen programs that you know, talk about the you know, that apparently in the Indigenous community, like that they're saying it themselves, that they have a huge you know, substance abuse issue and mental health issues related to generational trauma and all these sort of things, right? And then they've got, you know, conflict within their own community as well of basically like who's making deals with the white man, and others who feel like, you know, they weren't consulted with personally, and you know, they don't agree with this and this and this, you know, so it's like you know, there's obviously like a lot of issues in their community anyway, and you know, like we can backtrack, we can see what that stemmed from, yes. And I'm just saying that like maybe there are issues that like need to be addressed and stuff, like is there the number of Indigenous people that are being put in prison for, you know, robbery and for you know, other sort of crimes along those lines, you know, like even up in Northern Territory, I think it's like around Alice Springs or something. You know, like the Indigenous kids up there apparently just like have the whole like city in absolute like terror, how they like run the streets and things like that. And there are like good people who have tried to set up programs to you know, occupy the kids, you know, inspire the kids to make better choices and all this sort of stuff, but you know, they're still just roaming the streets, they're still smashing up cars and you know, the front of shops, and terrorizing, you know, just absolutely terrorizing. And like, what are we not supposed to arrest these kids, or are they not supposed to get in trouble because, you know, oh, they're Indigenous, and, you know, oh, we can't be overrepresenting, you know, the Indigenous people in custody or Indigenous kids in the system or something. But it's like, okay, well, they're not being kept at home, are they? They're not being you know, like told off enough, obviously, if they're still just out and about every single day, running around in their like gangs. They like fully have gangs, and they think that they're like Crips and Bloods. Like they even do symbols for it and wear the colours and all that. Like it's crazy. Like, you know, and if an Indigenous man does like, you know, rob you or whatever, is he not supposed to get arrested because he's Indigenous, and that will just add to the number of Indigenous people in custody? You know, like if there's an Indigenous couple that's you know, abusing their children somehow or whatever, like seriously, like you know, and you know, things are ongoing, and the children are suffering, should the child not be taken into the system just the same way that it would happen to a white family, because we don't want to overrepresent numbers? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I understand, like, what I'm saying right now could very easily be taken the wrong way. And, you know, it seems like I'm, you know, kind of standing up for the authorities, but I'm not. I'm really not. I'm just trying to say that, like, their own community talks about having a lot of issues that could very well pose issues for families and for children. Okay, they talk about that themselves, and now we're doing a big, you know, historical apology for the fact that their children are overrepresented in the foster system. And again, I think that inquest should be made public, because what the hell is happening? Is there some sort of systemic racism situation where just more Torres Strait Islander and Indigenous children and babies are being removed and not meeting a particular, requirement for that to occur, in comparison to a white family of white children? Like, obviously, that would be a very serious, breach of authority, breach of power, breach of trust, probably criminally prosecutable, if child protection is really doing that. Um, you know, um, but I'm just saying that, like, there are plenty also of white people who have their children taken off of them. There are plenty of white people who have child protection knock on their door because, someone has made an allegation, and, that allegation has to get thoroughly, investigated, and, that family is also put through the ringer. And, I'm just saying, sometimes I think that we seem to be very much in this, like, era of, ongoing shining the torch on the trauma that the Indigenous people have, faced and have been put through by the government, by authorities here in this country, by white people. And I'm not trying to take away from that. I'm not trying to say that they haven't been, very seriously negatively affected by colonization here and the things that white man has done to them. I'm not trying to say that. Of course, I acknowledge that. Okay. I'm just trying to say right now in 2025, is it still because of colonization? Or is it because of what individual choices you're making? And is it what individual choices a white person is making? And, at some point you have to, it's like for me, do I go on in my life excusing, if I was to have poor behavior, poor attitude, poor decision making, do I excuse all of that, and say, oh, it's because, I had a childhood of abuse and I've been through abusive relationships, and, violence has affected me negatively, and bad things that have happened to me, that's why I'm the way I am and making the choices that I make. Or do I, at some point, draw a line in the sand for myself, taking responsibility for myself and my life, and realize that it's all up to me, realize that, you can't go on forever blaming things of the past, for what's happening now, and excusing yourself, and things like that. And, I understand as well with Indigenous people, part of their, like, ongoing trauma is, like a break in their culture, right? So, like, a disconnection from how their ancestors lived before and their language that they spoke to how they are